Well, good evening, everybody. How's everybody doing tonight? La.
I'm great. How are you?
Wonderful. Hello, Brian Barber, Gary Spikes, Ozzy Sue. Oh, everybody's starting to filter in. So, what we got going on tonight?
Tonight is Bigfoot. I don't know much about it, but a couple weeks ago, I put something on my Facebook asking if anybody ever had experiences. And like 50 people wrote me. I really didn't know that many people had experiences.
He's real.
And so I'm ready to hear more about it. We're gonna have like 3 weeks of different people coming on. So,
well, welcome. So let's go ahead and start bringing them in. We got Matt, Mark, Barb, Greg, and I got a few more coming in here. Christopher and Ron Murphy. Welcome, everybody. Nice to have you.
Hey, it's good
nice
to be here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thanks for having me on.
do you guys want to go around real quick and introduce yourselves? If you have any books you want to talk about or anything, you could talk about it. Ladies first. Let's do.
All right. Okay. Hi. I think I know a lot of you. I'm Barb Hartman, and I am a mom and a grandma, and I live in Washington State. And I have a clan of Bigfoot living in the woods next to me, and they like to sit around in our yard and
Wow.
and throw things at my camera. Our home. I get great results on our Arlo home security cameras, which are IR. So, yeah.
Interesting.
Matthew.
There was one more lady in there, isn't there? No, all right, cool. I'm Matthew. I'm with the
Calling
Paranormal
me
Show.
out like that.
Well, you know, it's the holidays.
Okay, is this a little bit better for you, Matt?
There you go.
All right.
I dig. I'm part of a paranormal show called Mostly Ghostly. The gentleman named Ray Booten. We talk about all different types of unexplainables.
Very cool.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Ron Murphy.
Oh, I didn't know if we were going clockwise, counterclockwise. Not
I
sure.
don't know.
Yeah, yeah. It looks like I'm on some sort of strange filter as well, too. But I assure you, I'm not. I'm not sure what's going on there.
Your skin's really clear though, so that's good.
Well, thank you very much. That's what I'm going for. That's right. That's right. I've been studying Bigfoot for probably 30 some years. I mean, ever since I've been a child, I've been interested in the subject. And, I still look for the answers behind all these questions. Exactly what is it and why is it here and does it belong here and all that other good stuff.
Thank you.
Interesting. Christopher?
Yes, good evening. I'm a psychic remote viewer. I'm also with the Mutual UFO Network. I'm with the paranormal group Something Wicked. And I also a photographer.
Nice. Great.
Next.
My name is Greg Ogles. I'm from Alabama and part of a film group called Relic Films. And we have recently put out our first documentary. It's called The Legend of the Downy Booger. It chronicles a legend from Alabama. And we have actually caught some really interesting stuff in our film. So,
interesting.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Mark.
Hey guys, my name is Mark Bolden. I'm a paranormal researcher and cryptid enthusiast, and also the creator of the Dark Doorway podcast. I'm actually right now in the planning stages and of getting together a couple documentaries in 2024. One specifically on Bigfoot encounters. So look for that.
Interesting.
Nice. Have you all had experiences or are close to someone who's had an experience with Bigfoot? You can just throw it out there.
Yes.
Not personally, but I know of someone that did have experiences.
Yeah. Did everybody have a good experience or was it scary? Because I don't know. I've never had experience before, but it's interesting to me.
Yeah, I think the experiences are in the eye of the experiencer. It affects people in different ways. I've interviewed people who were, these big, burly kind of mountain men guys. And whenever they saw that there was nobody around, they would burst into tears because it affected them in such a way that their whole perspective on life change. And that is the thing. Like we're the witnesses see something that should not be there, right? According to our science, this should not be taking place. And what they have to try to do at that point is trying to make some sort of sense about what they saw. So I think that when we talk about any kind of experience, it's very personal and it's going to affect everybody differently.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting because, one of the things that I've noticed in researching different cases, because obviously these cases are worldwide. They go back for many, many years. Some of the earliest documented cases in North America, of course, were in the early 1800s. And then, of course, with the indigenous people, it goes back much, much further. But some of the things when it comes to personal experiences with Sasquatch, Yeti, Yowie, whatever you want to call it, it seems that people who have an aggressive stance seem to have more of a violent or aggressive encounters with Sasquatch, whereas, you got your campers and your hikers that just seem to be in the area. One of the things I always found interesting was they tell a story of, it chased me. It was always right behind me. And you're talking about an animal that can move through a forest, heavily wooded areas with ease. I mean, way faster than the average human can, but for some reason, it could never catch up to that human being that was running for his life trying to get back to the parking lot where their car is, which indicates to me that it really just clearly wanted to get you out of the area. These are intelligent animals.
Mm-hmm.
However, in cases of like Vietnam with the rock ape, where Marines talked about these encounters with these things, those encounters were usually violent, because you're talking about a time of war, people kept weapons, or if you're talking about cases where hunters were involved, which to an animal this type might even be an invader in its space, where they may look at this as something that they don't want in their area. Those encounters seem to be a little bit more aggressive. You have the cases of like the Headless Valley with the miners and things like that. A lot of these stories that did not end well. And then if you even look at some of the things that David Paulides writes about in his Missing 411 series, or Steph Young and Something Is in the Woods and all these other encounters, you got people that just clearly went missing. And even David Paulides has alluded to the fact that some of these could be misadventures with this cryptid. So I think those, like you mentioned, those personal experiences, they are relative to the person, but it could go, south really quick if you're out there with intention to be aggressive or to hunt one or even,
Right.
yeah.
Let me piggyback on that a little bit. Warren Coleman stated several years ago that he believes if Sasquatch is ever going to be found or ever documented, it's going to be uncovered by a team of women, not men, because like you said, my friend, people go in there very aggressively. And there's just an antagonism, I think, whenever you are dealing with men, just by nature. And I think the more of these reality programs, these reality ghost hunting programs proliferate, that the violence towards Bigfoot has changed exponentially. I mean, they had a program on not too long ago called Killing Bigfoot, right? So the idea that there is some sort of research going on out there is really in the teams involved. And I think that women go about it in such a more gentle way than men, that I think that if there is going to be proof that this creature does exist in flesh and blood form, it will be found out by women.
I'll go out and say when we first started with our film, we wanted to go out and prove the existence of Bigfoot. Just like you see on TV with all of these other filmmakers. But as we evolved in our research and just our stance involving Bigfoot in general, we thought proving the existence of Bigfoot would actually be counterproductive for Bigfoot, because as soon as you do, the government's going to get involved. And when the government gets involved, they destroy everything. But they won't be able to go out into the woods, because there'll be a protected habitat. And, one thing's going to lead to another. And eventually, the government might try to make them vote or something,
They would like that.
Another reason for the Democrats, right?
There does seem
So we've actually we've got some really good footage of something crawling on film between us and this. I'm gonna call it an orb for lack of another word. I don't know what it is. Little like phenomenon that we always see in the woods. But we accidentally caught this thing crawling between us and the orb.
Wow.
And
That would scare me.
it's really, really good footage of it. When you can blow up the screen and, you can enhance the footage some. But we've thought to ourselves, and if we've ever had extremely clear footage, we've debated whether or not we were actually going to show it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a lot of people think that way when they actually come across the what do you call it? The golden footage or the money shot.
Right.
Yeah, the money.
A lot of people protect it. So
Yeah.
So what are your?
I just was going to say that I'm sorry. I think that it behooves Bigfoot or Sasquatch, whatever we want to call them, to not be aggressive toward humans, because if they start to go out and, become aggressive, rip people apart, all this, people will have no tolerance for that, and then, like you said, the next thing you know, the special forces, whatever, will go in and with good reason, and then they're going to hunt them down and kill every one of them. And that would be, and I think they're smarter. I think that I know that they're smarter than that. I think they're, I really do. So it would behoove them to just not to be aggressive unless they are protecting themselves, their homes, their little ones. That only makes sense. Somebody comes in, like you're talking about the soldiers in Vietnam. Well, they see them with these weapons and all of the turmoil and the hurt and the terrible of war. They are going to be, let me get rid of these things, and so I think the rock throwing kind of makes perfect sense, Yeah,
these encounters with the rock apes in Vietnam were usually pretty violent. Like there were stories told by Marines where in these encounters, they literally are firing on these things, and these things are keep coming at them. Mm-hmm. They did police their dead and pull their dead out the area. So when you talk about them being intelligent, obviously so. They have their own language, whether it's wood knocks or those chatters or the yelps and the noises they make. And then there's always, and you guys can definitely chime in. I'd really be interested to hear what you guys think on this about the correlation between Sasquatch sightings and UFOs, because there seems to be correlations between those as well. You see these orbs, you see UFOs. Some people reported even seeing them come down out of a beam of light, or they've just generally been in the area. And it's really interesting to try to figure out exactly what's the connection between them.
Interestingly enough, on an expedition where we were filming last year, one of my crewmates and I, we actually saw a beam of light in an area where we had a very good clear footage of a Sasquatch. So we're in the exact same area, not at the same time, but it was the exact same area, and we saw this weird beam of light come, in the sky. So, just I don't know if it's just coincidence or what, but there's some kind of definite correlation to it somewhere.
Right, Barb. I was wondering if Barb has photographed any light anomalies on your property.
Yes, I do get that on. I definitely get that on the video, and it's just unexplainable and just weird. Almost like like a big sphere. Sometimes will just kind of. Now I can't say that that's I can't say that that's a portal or that's a UFO or anything. It could just be a big light anomaly, but it is interesting. But now Grizzly and we have a show on Thursday on his channel on Thursdays, and we'd interviewed a woman that had video, Jennifer Appleton, and she actually had video of one coming out of the wood line, and there was a big bright light, right, Grizzly? Behind it. And it certainly looked like, and there was no reason for there's no light source back there like that. So there would be no reason for that light source to be back there. But so it certainly looked like that, but can't say for sure.
Yeah, so interdimensional beings?
I think they are.
Essentially, yeah.
You remember? You remember one of the stories that came out of Skinwalker Ranch when Robert Bigelow had his original NIDS team out there at Skinwalker Ranch. One of the two of the researchers that was out there, I guess one of them had his binoculars, another one had like an infrared viewing device. I don't remember if he had an infrared, but either way, one of them saw a pinpoint of light form in the night sky. It got bigger and bigger, and then at some point, it opened up to the point where they saw blue sky on the other side, and they did see something, a silhouette of something that resembled a Bigfoot come out and dart off into the darkness. So, and even in cases like with the what was it, that Expedition Bigfoot, Mariah Major and her team, when they looked out, I mean, they saw something on the other side of a river. I remember in one episode, and it sort of kind of resembled the movie Predator, where you have this this visual distortion moving along, and this is also something that's consistent with what other experiencers have seen, where they see this visual distortion. So whether it's able to cloak or whether it's able to move interdimensionally, that's a good question. You know, how are they? How are they undetected?
I can shed some light on this myself. ETs and Bigfoot are one and the same because we're all one cohesive unit. The ETs refer to what we call it as like God as a higher being, and everything is made from that one source. And the Bigfoot, as we call them, the Sasquatch, they're able to go through different dimensions because up there or in space there is no time. It's all now, and so they're able to go through these different dimensions. And what they do is they mark their territory on different time frames, and they're able to go back to those time frames to their territory.
Interesting.
That's amazing.
I actually explained to someone how I'm a physics fanatic, right? And I'm just deeply into science and so forth. So I actually explained to someone how you can interpret moving between dimensions. Like the way I explained it, just to try to put in layman's terms, I said, imagine if your dimension was living room, and that was all you knew was living room, right? And my dimension was kitchen, living room. I'm in the kitchen. I see you walking around this living room. I'm like, hey, I wonder what they're doing over there. I walk through the doorway into the living room, but from your perspective, I just appeared out of nowhere. And it's like, holy cow, where'd this guy come from? And I'm trying to talk to you. You're freaking out. I'm like, oh, this person is clearly nuts, right? So I turn around, I go back into the kitchen. And then you see me walk into a wall and vanish, right? So to you, I've just clearly did something that's really outside of your scope of understanding, right? But to me, I just went from one room to the other. So for this cryptid, it may be moving between dimensions, and it's perfectly natural for it to do this.
Yes, all instantaneously.
It doesn't see itself as doing anything magical or phenomenal, and to us, we're like, holy cow, this thing just cloaked and vanished.
Right.
You know,
that's everyday life to them, though. That's everyday life. Like what we do is everyday life.
Perfectly normal for them, you know. So,
and that also blurs the lines on ghost investigations, UFOs, cryptids, because that's the same thing. If you were doing a ghost investigation, you have no idea what that is either. So many people have talked about the souls of the departed that are still lingering here, but what happens if we're dealing with just other dimensional beings? Like you had said, somebody walks through a wall, and that's just their way of operating within their world.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's true. All right, Matt, what was your experience that you had?
I don't have any personal experiences. We've just talked to a few people. I do think it's an interdimensional thing, though, for sure, because it's the best way to kind of hide itself. You know what I mean? Like you brought up our friends, the government, earlier, and if it was out there like all the time and they really wanted to find it, they'd find it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like, it's got to have somewhere to slip off to.
That's true.
Maybe they already know where it's at, Matt. They may already.
They probably do.
There's no urgency in looking for something when you already know what's there.
Right. That would explain, so many reports that we get and people that we've talked to, that there's, tracks in the snow, and then they just stop. A neighbor of mine had in the snow, he said the tracks actually went on for a mile from near his house, and he walked back into the woods. It's still his property, and they went on for a mile, and then they just stopped, vanished. Wow. I mean, there was nothing else.
That happened to us too. And you're making our film.
Yes, yeah.
that was their point of return right there, is where they went back to the other
Okay.
side.
Yeah. I mean, what else?
Yeah, I experienced something like this too, and I documented it as well. It was a snow day for my kids at school, so I opened up the door, went outside to see how bad it was, and it was new fallen snow, so everything was really white and glittering and everything. And it was just as it was getting dawn outside, and I noticed there was some disruptions in my yard, and I got closer, and it was these very small tracks, about the size of a dollar bill. And they were barefoot, but they weren't very tall. They weren't very big. So I thought, I will investigate this, because I live near a wood line, right? And about 100 yards from the wood line is whenever the tracks began. But they didn't just begin. It was a right track, another right track, and then a left right track, as if something took time to either materialize or stepped off of something. And now remember, I'm a Bigfoot investigator, right? So it was as if they knew who I was, or the happenstance of this happening just by accident is almost too much, because what happens was these tracks go up to my dining room window and appear to look in, whatever, because the tracks are facing my dining room window, and then they go over hill and they vanish again. Now remember, this is snow, right? There's completely pristine. There's no tracks of deer or anything else, and it's just these barefooted tracks of about the size of a 10-year-old kid or whatever. And that's hard to grasp, because I'm skeptical by nature, and I think we have to be in this field, right? But something took time before it became a fully physical form, and then it left the same way. So I don't know how else to make any sense of that.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's something else that kind of happened during the making of our film. We were on our last investigation. I had a thermal camera, and I saw something crawling down from the hill, and we suspected it being a Bigfoot just crawling up on us. And it crawled up to a log and then pushed up on a log and then kind of went back down and then disappeared, just vanished off of thermal. And we're like, holy moly, how did that happen? How do you hide from thermal, right? And then we're like, well, you know, at least we're going to be able to, you know, show the viewers this, right? Well, when we get back, just that portion of the thermal, that footage was corrupted. So we didn't even get to show fans that. Yeah. So many things happened to us that, you know, our footage ended up being corrupted. I mean, it took us years to make it just because of that.
Wow. Well, that was their energy that corrupted the footage. Their energy disrupt the.
I mean, that's happened over and over and over again.
Or the energy of a portal opening.
Yes.
Something.
Yeah.
But no lie, something was crawling and then disappeared from not clear, but it was a thermal image.
Yeah. This is a great discussion. So let me bring up this idea, and this is something I've been toying with for a while. What happens if these creatures are indeed pure energy, and that energy that's the key to go in and between worlds? So what is actually happening? And that's the reason we don't get good photographs of them, or sometimes one person can see them and the other person can't. What happens if these are some sort of energy life forms that are able to project into us an image of what they want you to see? See, that would be a complete game changer at that point, because as I get closer to my investigations and do more and more, these anomalous lights keep on reappearing again and again and again. The first one I saw, and I didn't know what to expect of it, was about 20 years ago, and I was out with another investigative partner, and we were out in the middle of nowhere, and all of a sudden, all around us in the air, there was these sparks of static electricity. It looks like someone took a blanket off of a bed in the wintertime, that kind of static electricity. And whatever happened, we decided it was best to get out of there, because we'd never experienced anything like this before. And the discharge of electricity in the air as well, too, started to drain all of our equipment. So as we go back to get to where we parked, which is about a mile and a half away, we noticed that there is this brilliant white emanation of light. It just kind of came out of a pinpoint. It came to a fairly good size, and it looked almost like a sparkler because whenever it dissipated, there was this kind of sparkly sensation as well too. And we were kind of afraid because we had to go back that way. And when we got to the point where the light appeared, something now was on the right side of us following us in the woods. So up until that time, there was nothing going at all. So was that something breaking into our world, or was it, up the portal, as you said too, my friend? But the other thing I want to point out really quickly as well too, the last time I had any interactions with these lights as well, it was preceded by the sound of wind chimes. It was some sort of frequency, and it was only 3. It was like ding, 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 like that, as if there is a frequency out there, a vibration out there that is allowing these things to operate within our world. Or, like I said too, this might sound a little bit outlandish, but what happens if the sound that we're hearing and the lights that we see are indeed those things?
Well, I really don't think that's outlandish at all, because when I first started actually having a lot of that activity, I first started seeing orbs, right? And I had not ever heard of orbs before until I actually saw them. And it took me some time to come to terms with what I was seeing, because they weren't supposed to be real, right? So anyway, I'm there with my crewmate, and we see these 2 glaring orbs. They're about 10 foot up, and they almost look like eyes to me. And I look at Brent and say, "Brent, look at this." And he's like, "What? Where?" And like, "Right there in front of us." "Where?" We kept on going back and forth like that. He couldn't see them, but I could. And it took him months to be able to actually see these big bright orbs come. They look like flashlights coming through the woods. They're really, really bright. It took him months to be able to see them. But one thing that we've experienced with them is that they're either under intelligent control, or they're intelligent themselves, because they've interacted with us. They were not fleeting. They stayed around us for hours, lots of times, and they would stay around with us so long that we would go back to camp and they would follow us.
Wow.
It's funny when you said that they're under possibility of them being under intelligent control, because I study this topic a lot, and some of the things I try to go into is looking at alternative theories about what these things could be and what could be influencing them. And of course, we mentioned the correlation between UFO sightings. When I lived in Florida in Northport, you had a lot of occurrences of orbs, which was just south of the Mayaca Forest where the skunk ape is at, and just north of where the famous Gulf Breeze UFO sightings took place. But I always think of things like in antiquity, when you look at when the Sumerians talked about the Anunnaki, and they talked about how that the human race was a hybrid race created specifically to mine gold to help the Anunnaki to save their dying planet, right? So, and I kind of wondered if they would take some of the early proto-humans and create these genetic experiments to create a more modern human that they could control to use as a slave race to mine gold. I wonder if this is a case with the same thing with these beings, because you look at this correlation between UFOs and Sasquatch, Bigfoot, Yeti, wherever you want to call it, Wendigo, and whatever part of the world it is. What if this is a hybridization experiment that they are under intelligent control to serve whatever purpose these other beings need them to serve? And I wonder if this is another case.
Interesting.
Very possible.
That is interesting. Yeah, I wouldn't doubt it. They do all kinds of weird stuff that we don't know. It would make sense,
Yeah,
True.
We don't know for sure about any of this, and it's very, and it seems the more that you get into investigation and the more evidence that it just, the weirder and weirder for me anyway. And I think a lot of people say the same thing. The weirder it gets.
Oh yeah.
Right. Now, about 7 years ago, I wrote a book about the history of Bigfoot. It was called "On Wild Men: Tracking Bigfoot Through History." And when we look at the Near East and Europe, we see that the wild man has always been an archetypal character around the world. But at the very first instances of these beings, whether it be represented in art or whether it would be represented in literature. Because remember, one of the first pieces of literature is the Epic of Gilgamesh, and we see a character in that much like a wild man that you would see here in America under the name of Sasquatch. But from the very beginning, you see these creatures attached to the other world. Now, of course, they weren't talking about UFOs and they weren't talking about, known worlds, but there was an allusion to that, right? In a pre-scientific community, there will always be allusions to things. And I know that the one character by the name of Enkidu, in the Epic of Gilgamesh, he was said to have been lifted up off of the earth and taken around in a chariot, which seems remarkably like some sort of UFO abduction, right? And so we do know that there has been some fascination with these creatures tied also to the other world or space or what have you. The other interesting thing that I wanted to point out too is that in the Pacific Northwest, the Bigfoot creature up there is much more spiritual, and it acts as a psychopompus, which is the conveyor of human souls to the other side. So again, very interesting. I mean, we see Bigfoot basically as interlopers within the legend, right? We're injecting our 21st century biases and opinions into a world that at once was much more spiritual and more foreign than we could possibly comprehend.
Oh yeah.
Well, there is.
Bob asked, has anybody had a Dogman experience? Or do you think they're kind of related, or people think they see a Dogman, but it's a Bigfoot?
Well, I've had a Dogman experience myself, but we're going on the hunt for the Dogman in our second film. We're going to the land between the lakes to go on the hunt.
So there's a lot of activity going down there right now.
Yeah. Yes. Oh, yeah.
A lot.
Yeah. A few years ago here, my husband was, and this was before it wasn't before we began to get evidence here, which we bought the house in 2017. And in April of 2018 is when we had the first evidence that it's like, okay, we can't continue, to ignore this. It was a massive footprint, bare, footprint in the gravel in our backyard. And but I think in between this time, maybe shortly thereafter, my husband walked up to we have a compost pile, which is, in the corner of a property. And he said this thing that looked like a big black dog he thought maybe eating at but it then kind of not, it didn't get up on two legs. It wasn't that. It kind of, but got up and it saw him and ran off. And he said it was almost supernatural how fast this thing could run.
Oh, God.
So now, and it looked like a big black dog. Now, who knows what, he isn't into cryptids like I am. So I was like, maybe it's a dog man. He's like, well, I don't know. But, I don't know. Other than that, I haven't.
Well, there are different races of as we call the Bigfoot Sasquatch. They're good and they're bad, and of course there's different colors to their skin and fur too. And some of the people that I've worked with have encountered rather pleasant Bigfoot experiences, but there has been a few that has been negative. Now the negative ones, they're the ones that really like to protect their area, their territories. They don't like anybody invading their space. Whereas the pleasant ones, they don't mind a little bit of interaction. And some people may experience what looks like dog creatures. Those are more of a younger form of Bigfoot, and they do kind of have, in some cases, can have like a dog face. But there again, it can be misidentifications as well.
Does the panel think Sasquatch are spiritual like we are? Gary Spikes wants to know.
I'd say yeah.
I think so.
Yeah, definitely. Guaranteed.
I think anything that's tied that closely to nature has to be, right?
Yeah.
Just by the very nature of its existence. Now, the good thing about Bigfoot is that it would not be tied up in the idea of religion, right? Because in many ways, it is an enemy of God, because religions tell you how you should come to the divine whenever you're on this kind of path of nature, and the divine is all around you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think these things are. I think these things are so close to nature, and maybe that is their religion. Maybe they just see themselves as protectors of their surroundings. Whether they're doing it for their own self-preservation to keep human beings out, or whether they actually see that space as a sacred space. If you look at their encounters with even Native Americans, like throughout the Pacific Northwest and things like that, you kind of get that impression. You heard stories about them living or coexisting peacefully, and then you've heard other stories where the encounters ultimately went south to where they were almost at war with these type of creatures. But I do think that they're spiritual, but just not in the same way we are.
I agree. Yeah.
Do you think they know more? They know more about the afterlife and all that than we do?
Yeah,
They probably,
they can.
Yeah.
They can go from one to the other, so they know twice more about it than we do.
Yeah.
I mean,
And believe it or not, they're healthier than we are because they eat off of nature, land and nature, whereas we eat a lot of the grease and fat and stuff.
Yep.
Yeah, you're not going to see one of them pulling up to a drive-through, getting a
Now, hold up. Now wait a
number
minute.
2 and asking to supersize it.
Now they were known to dumpster dive.
I was just going to say that. That's right. That's right.
So they do crave that peanut butter that people feed them, right?
Oh yeah.
And Oreo cookies and Snicker bars. It depends on what area you're at. So yeah,
That's right. That's right. Yeah, one of these days, somebody's going to get so full you'll be able to run one of these things down yourself.
Well, we got a guy in our audience, and I hate to bring up his name, Brian.
Sweet.
He fed these things, those Costco's, those Super Walmarts or whatever, Sam's peanut butter jars, the big ones.
Oh yeah,
6 to 9 of those a week for almost 2 years, and he got sick, and he couldn't go out and feed them. Well, these damn things got mad and took it up to the neighbor's house, throwing the empty jars at the neighbor's houses, banging on the house's walls. It got so bad, the Fish and Wildlife got involved.
Oh
But
my
they would never
God.
call them Sasquatch. They call them bears.
Bears.
So yes.
Because that's what bears do. Throw
Right.
jars at us.
Well,
Like kids having tantrums.
well, who can resist the creamy taste of Jif?
Well, we have found out. Now I know this sounds funny. They do not like crunchy peanut butter.
no, I don't either.
Brian,
Yeah.
I don't either. Yeah. But Brian put this to the theory. You know how they come in different colors. He changed the
Right.
color lids, and they still knew better.
Oh, right.
Yes.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're pretty intelligent.
Okay, I have hi Xander. I love that's
Hey,
my son Xander.
Hi, Xander.
Well,
Hey,
now I'm not
Xander.
going to ask the question I was going to ask. I'll wait anyway. So what was one of the questions, Grizzly, you did? Where all the psychics we listened to an audio of Bigfoot and
The
how
Sierra sounds, Ron
Sierra sounds.
Moore.
that was
More
great.
fun,
Have
wasn't
you? Yeah, have you all heard? That was the first time I ever heard them speak like that. I've never heard it before.
The
And it
Samurai
was-
Chatter, and
Yeah.
so I found out by Ron that was him egging them on. I was like, "Damn it, Ron!" I was telling everybody I would chokehold that son of a gun and put him in a chokehold, and make him pass out because he's over there aggravating them.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
Didn't know what they were. Like he said, they didn't know what they were. And
he
they've been
said I
dealing
was
with
29 years old. I was, indestructible.
Yeah. Yep.
So
Yeah,
what's
it's
your
very
takes on the Sierra sounds?
The what?
the
So what's
Sierra
everybody's
sound.
take on the
That's
Sierra
what they
sound?
call them. Yeah. I mean, I think they're they're legitimate, and they've been studied so by professional, linguists. Scott Nelson just is so, oh my gosh, he's so overqualified, really, and he said that there's definitely a pattern of speech that he could decipher. So I think it's really, super interesting.
That chatter is pretty.
Yes.
It's pretty odd when you listen to it because they're clearly something that they can understand between the method of communication. It's really impressive though.
Yeah, I've heard it in person too. I mean, the it's kind of what it sounds like to us, and it sounds like somebody's talking, but you can't quite make out what the words that they're saying.
Mhm.
So we've experienced that a lot, and it's kind of a little freaky. you know.
There is, yeah. I've appeared at 2 different conferences with Mr. Moorhead, and he is a very legitimate human being. You know, he's genuine. He's really looking for the answer. And if any of your listeners are interested in his take on things, he just recently wrote a book. I think it's about 2 years old, called "The Quantum Bigfoot," which looks at Bigfoot from a completely different angle than it being flesh and blood. So yeah, it's a very good book.
Yeah, excellent book.
Interesting.
Excellent book. Yep.
So we've also found out that by his sounds, right, a lot of people hear the similar sounds like you just said. And we also, by witnesses, said that usually it's the male Bigfoot getting hollered at by the woman to leave the humans alone, and they're arguing. And
Yeah,
the woman usually saves the male Bigfoot from attacking. What's your all's take on that?
Oh.
It seems natural to me. I
Yeah.
mean,
Typical woman, yeah. Typical woman.
I did not say that.
Yeah.
Trying to just keep the peace. I have there's one that he sounds kind of like the Snuffleupagus on Sesame Street.
Yeah.
I mean, Grizzly's heard it, and just has this distinctive like snort, and but he seems to have a pattern where it almost sounds like he's counting and he's like grunting, and but I feel like it's a form of he's talking and he's maybe instructing the little ones or trying to keep them, keep maybe if they're being naughty or whatever. Because they like to run on my roof. I've never seen it, but I've heard it. And
wow.
Seen
So
evidence.
My roof would have.
Yeah.
So what about the different forms of communication that you got though? Because you got the chattering, right? Then you got the yells. The people have heard like whistles, and then of course the wood knocks. So I'm wondering, like, for example, why they don't have a standardized form of communication, or if each type of communication just serves a different purpose. Like maybe the wood knocks they feel is a way of warning another squatch when humans are in the area, but not trying to reveal their actual position. Or, I just wonder why they have so many different methods of communication. What purposes they serve.
So the theory is behind that, and that is a very good question, is that they look at the national tribes in America, right? Indigenous people. And they look at the different languages they speak, Cherokee and the ones across. Now, we know by witnesses that you can say OCO, and they will get responses back in that native language. But you take that language, you go across the United States or further down south and say that, and you don't get a response, or they respond back to you in a different type of native language. What's your all's take on that?
I was going to say the same thing. Just like languages are different. Say like in Europe, you don't go too far and you've got a completely different language.
Right.
I mean, it could be the same way. I mean, maybe they just don't interact with each other like the ones in the South don't interact with the ones out West. So they don't have the same language, so to speak.
I know that mimicking. I'm sorry, I've heard them mimicking owls and frogs and ducks, and so I think that just their method of communication is just different, obviously. Than
it's like the one Barb had. The damn thing went. Ooh, ooh,
yeah.
And it's like, what the hell? Did you just give up?
Yeah, I don't want to be a duck anymore. Quack, quack.
Yeah, or whatever it did, and it's just like, wow.
It did. Yeah.
So the question is for everybody: have y'all ever had any telepathy, mind speak with these creatures?
I have not.
Any mental?
Not with
but go ahead.
I said not with the Bigfoot, but I have had with the ETs. But I do know that the male Bigfoots do have more of a deeper voice, and the females don't. And the reason that the females are so protective of us is because the males tend to be a little bit more aggressive because they want our food or they want our belongings, different things. The females kind of have a heart, and they know that we don't want them taking our stuff. So the females will a lot of times they'll fight with the males to keep them off of us. It is.
That's interesting.
It was funny because Rebecca was like, I'm glad that Bigfoot is something. I have to go back and read her comment bitching about something. It was funny. It made me laugh.
Yeah.
Put it back up, Rebecca, so I can post it. But what's your all take on that?
About what now? Are we still on the language order? What are we on now?
About the mind speak.
Oh, the mind speak. Yes. So I've never witnessed anything like that, but I am a big proponent of using infrasound. Right. I do think that infrasound is used in a lot of cases because I've been in the woods, and although I didn't hear anything come into my mind, I did have this flight or fight response coming very primordial feeling, like this is almost a vestigial type of emotion that very few people get to witness, but it's almost as if we're back on the savannah being stalked by a lion, right? Something along those lines. It just gives you that feeling that we got to get out of this area.
Same.
Yes, same. Yeah.
That's interesting. So it was almost like something primal, something that's deep within your DNA that says something's not right, and we don't need to be here.
Right.
Exactly.
Yes. Yeah. And you know how we know about it, getting back, going almost full circle. The reason why we know so much about infrasound is because it has a military capacity, right? It's a way that you could say territorial without being combatant, right? So we do know that people can use infrasound to, have basically a border where your enemy won't transgress because the strange things could happen. One of the studies done by MSNBC, and again, this is probably about 20 years ago, stated that there was an overwhelming feeling of the paranormal. And when pressed a little bit further to get kind of a definition for that, it was a feeling that there was something in the room with you, hearing things that weren't there. So infrasound is a true scientific thing out there in nature. We know that crocodiles use it, alligators use it, elephants, a lot of different cetaceans, and we also know that tigers use it and all this stuff as well too. So we do know that mammals are capable of producing infrasound. And if I were an animal and I knew that human beings were dangerous to me, but I still had to live in and around their territory, the evolution of a defense mechanism like infrasound would be invaluable. And I think that's used a lot of the times.
And that's how I would classify the mind speak too, is using the infrasound to give you that feeling of dread, hey, don't come here. That's how I would define it. And it's really how we classified it as in our film. But I wouldn't really, I've never experienced any telepathy, so to speak.
Right. Right.
I've experienced that.
And I've interviewed people where it feels like they would come in contact with this creature haphazardly, just out in the woods, and all of a sudden they step into its territory, and they talk about feeling like they got punched in the chest to the point that they actually got knocked over. So yeah, these kind of things, I truly believe, is whenever people also witness Sasquatch or Bigfoot or whatever you want to call it, they're witnessing it not only visually and auditorily, but almost fundamentally, within themselves as well too. The very fiber of their being is torn apart.
Yeah, I experienced infrasound last October, not this past October, a year ago in 2022, for the first time, and it was right after I heard one grunt at me for the first time, and I heard the grunt twice, but then I thought, I kind of stepped back and I thought, wait, did that really happen? Like, is that my imagination? And I thought, there was one more area that I was in the woods and I was investigating. There was one more area that I wanted to get closer to. And all of a sudden I was hit by this overwhelming, like, vertigo, stick to my stomach, but not like I was going to throw up, but just such terrible vertigo. And I thought, oh my gosh, am I having a heart attack or a stroke or something? I didn't know anything about infrasound at that. I didn't know about it, and I thought, wow, and so I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I'm so fatigued, and I just kept walking, and then all of a sudden it just like left me. The feeling completely left me. It was like I was absolutely normal, but I realized I was walking the wrong way. I would not have been able to get back to my house that way, and so I'm like, well, that was so bizarre. So corrected my course, and I'm walking, and it hit me, and it hit me again. And really, the only way I made it like to the property line, I just kept looking at like a corner of the our garage roof, and I was like, I just have to keep walking toward that. I was really afraid that I was having a heart attack or a stroke or something.
And kind of reminiscent of the infrasound attacks at the embassy.
Yeah,
the same symptoms they experience there.
Yes. And when I got to the edge of the property line, it completely stopped like nothing. I mean, I was completely normal. I didn't even have that. Some people will feel bad for a few days, or they'll feel fatigued. I didn't have that.
It was the same with us. Once we got out of that area, perfectly fine.
Mm-hmm.
It's because of the energy that they leave there. They put their energy in that area because that's how they communicate with each other, is through energy and the vibrations and what have you. So when you walk into their field of energy, of course they can handle it better than we can due to their weight, size, and they're accustomed to it. We walk into that area, we as being of a lesser energy field, we take in that energy, and it can be harmful. Because the more stronger their energy, the more it affects us, because we don't have the capabilities to understand it or let alone handle it.
That makes sense. Yeah.
So do you think that they use it, Chris? Do you think they would use it as a method to, to have get me out of there, just to make sure I don't come closer? Or you think I just walked into the, their energy field maybe?
I knew he's going to ask that. What they do see is their energy field is so strong, because each one of those has a different energy. And then they know the difference between one another. Like a female has one energy, a male has a different one. They know the difference. And what they will do a lot of times is, if somebody is off course or is on course or whatever, they need help, they will give you a certain feeling to try to get you to halt and redirect yourself.
Yeah.
And then they put you back on course. A lot of people, I won't give out names, but they go through similar things, even with ET contact, and then they feel a little nauseous or disarranged. But then in the end, they realize, okay, if I hadn't felt this way, I would not have gotten where I needed to be.
True.
Has anyone on an investigation tried to record these infrasound events? Do you know?
I'm not aware of any of it.
I record every time I'm out there usually, and I ask their permission as soon as I get into their area, but not so much the infrasound. I just want to see if I get any sounds, or if I can even have them show up on camera, because sometimes they will.
Yeah. Quite frankly, I just simply don't have the equipment to do it. I think that to measure infrasound, we have to have, very specific type of gauged equipment, and I just don't have that.
Same with me. We may have it. I just don't have the equipment to be able to detect it.
And one thing to remember is that if anybody does get anything on camera or film, make sure you make copies of it and then lock one up, because otherwise it will get confiscated.
That's true.
So infrasound, we used them in law enforcement on the sirens, called the rumbler. And what it would do is that if you were driving in traffic and I was approaching your vehicle and you didn't see me or hear me, because of your music, it would vibrate your body to get your attention.
Whoa,
and it's called the rumbler siren.
I didn't know that. Wow.
Yes. And that's been out for years.
Jeez.
Well, that explains a lot now.
So,
wow.
That's pretty interesting.
Wow.
Yeah.
I had no clue.
Jimmy said I just saw from Appalachian Trail, he said his message or his question got overlooked.
I went back to 942. I didn't see it.
Oh, it's not there. Okay. Yeah, Jimmy, if you could
put it in all caps, please.
Glory.
Yeah.
We'll get it answered. Absolutely.
Yep. Okay, I have a gross question, but I'm honestly interested. Do some people think that they mate with humans? What do you guys think? Don't judge me. I just want to know.
Yeah.
Freak.
Well,
do you guys think they do?
They say no. They
have
from,
yeah. They have in the past. They have.
They have, because once we cross over or pass on, our consciousness still lives in like a chamber. And then when it's our turn, we're able to come back as any form we want, whether it be animal, ET, or even Bigfoot.
Huh.
So, and then, of course, our memories are erased, so that way we don't remember anything from our previous life, because we start fresh and start new. But however, we can still we can still, if the love and bond was strong enough, and when we come across somebody we once knew, we can still project some of those feelings back out.
Yeah.
Yeah. A couple of months ago, I was watching a program about this idea of Bigfoot mating with women. It was on about 3 o'clock in the morning on Cinemax. I did get a lot of value out of it, but I will tell you this: there has been a case back in there has been a case back in 1924 where Albert Ostman was abducted. I just thought I'd see who would catch on to that. So, yeah, Albert Austin was abducted, and he was taken to a place where a family of Bigfoot had gathered, and he firmly believed he was gifted to the teenage female Bigfoot that was there. So, no mating occurred or anything like that. But okay. So let me ask you guys this question. I know, yeah. You know. I got my kinks, my friend. I got my kinks. Hey, so anyways.
I don't like where any of the story's going.
Exactly. We need to get out of the ditch.
Guys, I have a real question for you. I have a real question for you. Okay, so when we talk about Bigfoot, and all over the world has these things, right? So let me ask you a question. How did it get to Australia if the Yowie does indeed exist? My theory is it may have entered Australia in utero.
Do what?
Yep. So my theory is this. Okay, that if indeed there is a ape or whatever, if it's a flesh and blood animal, how would it have gotten to Australia? And getting back to what Lala said, one of my theories is if that it does exist as a flesh and blood being. If we're just going flesh and blood, right?
Right.
That one of the ways it might have gotten there is by a female mating with one, and the female taking it there, the human female taking it there, rather than it independently evolving in Australia.
Right.
Or it could came on a ship, right?
Yeah.
Well, the Australian people were some of the oldest in the world, right? I mean, we have instances there going back 55,000 years ago. So we're going deep into the prehistoric past here. So, like I said, and I will tell you though, when we talk about the Nephilim, which we haven't talked about, but one of the theories is that these creatures were mating with human women, and that was just an explanation for what was going on in the Near East regarding these Bigfoot-like creatures and women. So,
and if you take the Cherokee story of the Sioux Kaloo, if you familiarize yourself with that, the answer to Lala's question would be yes.
Okay.
Yeah, they would.
And that's interesting that you brought up the Nephilim, because we could have a whole other discussion on that too, because I've had theories that go back to even that time when you talk about the Nephilim and the fallen ones, and how they were, because even Native Americans talk about the red hair giants and
absolutely
and trapping them in the cave in
We got
the Canyon and so forth. So yeah, but it's pretty interesting. Sorry.
I was going to say, you got to remember too that since they're able to time travel through these portals, that they can have a love affair in one time frame, and they can go back and come back and forth and see that loved one. So actually, the one they love doesn't necessarily die, because they can go back and go back and relive that affair.
Yeah, I tended to think that they're doing this interdimensional travel through portals. Also because you look at the locations at which they've been spotted, like you mentioned the Yowie, in the their relationship with the Aboriginals in the outback, and then you have in the Ohio grassman, in Florida you got the skunk ape, in Nepal you have the Yeti, you have the Wendigo in Canada, you've got what was it, in Mongolia you have the Almas, you have all these different variants of this, and you have one in China which is called the Yeren, in Japan is the what is it, the Hebigon or something like that, and you have all these different variants of the same animal with slight differences, like some are a little bit taller, some are a little bit bulkier, some are a little heavier, some a little lighter, but it all seems to be tied into the same cryptid, in the same way that you have humans of different types, different ethnicities and geological or geographical backgrounds. So you have the same thing with these cryptids as well. But if they came in utero, that's something that would be in that. I didn't even think about that, because
yeah. Well, whenever Yeah, whatever I was thinking about the Nephilim. So a lot of people say that, and this is a common thing whenever you look at, Greco-Roman history, they always set their foundations in the distant past, and it's always heroes, right? I mean, that's what we're dealing with there. The Joseph Campbell type of thing, that these great civilizations came from some sort of hero's quest, right? And as we can see more often than not, whenever we come to the Judaic scriptures, we see often that the heroes have to confront a giant of some kind, right? Mm-hmm. And getting back to Lala, do they mate with women or whatever? It's been said in some Jewish commentaries that Goliath had 100 fathers, to show that there was this constant kind of lascivious nature to these beings, right? So I think whenever we're dealing with these things, we almost have to see it from the perspective in which it was written, because that really informs us what they thought, what the people at that particular time was thinking, right? And it shows that, as somebody had said too, about we're talking about different Native American cultures as well too, it does show that at least in the distant past there was much more interaction between humans and whatever these creatures are. Say, like you said, my friend, about Lovelock Cave and everything like that, right? Where we would have separate groups living, and then there would be battles, things would come to a head, things would become explosive. So I think that we probably did have much more interaction with these creatures in the past, and it might have been relatively recently that we started to have this separation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with you on that one 100%. Mm-hmm. Like I said, just looking at what just stories from various indigenous people of the different geographical backgrounds. I mean, they seem to, when they talk about the past, they talk about an almost harmonious relationship with these types of beings, and then
when they
seem to have grown apart.
Mm-hmm. When they do form an attachment to a human, like a love attachment, or maybe a mother or father type attachment, when they come around, they usually will leave a gift. If you go look, there will be a gift left. Like there'll be it could be flowers, or it could be something they took from another dimension, but they'll bring you a gift and leave it there. That is their way of saying that we were here.
I've heard the same thing. I've heard the same thing. That's pretty amazing. The woman that took the famous photo of the Florida skunk ape. I mean, one of the things that she kept doing was that initially was like stealing apples off her back porch or whatever, and then she kept putting them out there, and ultimately she went out one day and she snapped a famous photo, and this giant thing that looks almost like, I don't know, well, it can only be one thing, and it's so hilarious because what does everybody say? They go, how come every photo you see of Bigfoot is always this fuzzy, blurry photo? And then when people start coming back with modern technology, smartphones, and they're creating these crystal clear images or fairly clear images, the first thing people say is fake. They blow up the copy. Fake. It's like, okay, so what do you want? You asked for a clear image. You got a clear image. There's nothing about this. Come on, you can even look at the Patterson-Gimlin film. I mean, come on, they analyzed the heck out of it. 1967. They analyzed it. Bluff Creek. They analyzed the heck out of this thing. People still think that this is a man in a costume, even though anatomically the skeletal joints do not line up with a human being, with that of a human being. And they've even gone back and looked at it in comparison to objects in the area now that they know the exact area now, and they could tell by the size that it was large. They could see the breasts, you could see you could see the muscle structure underneath this costume.
Yeah.
But yet people will still look at this and be like, fake. It's like, no, there've been everything from primatologists to, they've already pretty much sealed the deal that this is a legitimate film.
Yes, because even Hollywood, the best special effects people and Walt Disney, they were asked and they said, no, we did not have the technology back then to do anything like that. And so these two guys who were just like regular ranchers, from Washington State, they put out what, I don't know what that would have been, $100,000 at that time. I don't know, 50,000.
It was Roger Patterson and Bob Gimlin. I mean, they were like amateur Bigfoot hunters. They were out there all day. They were out there all day looking for this thing. They didn't, and just out of the blue, when they're ready to pack it in for the night, they're coming back and they stumble across this thing, walking across Bluff Creek, and they use their last, I forgot how many feet of film, 100 feet of film, and they got this short And we've analyzed this thing over and over for decades, and it came to the conclusion that this is not a fake. I mean, but yet people will still. And I think what will happen is this: you got some people. One school of thought says nobody will be satisfied until a body comes back, right? So you got people out there that actually think they're going to hunt this thing and kill it and bring back a body. You got other people that are looking for photographic or other types of scientific evidence. You know, DNA evidence comes back. What is it? What is it usually? Part human, part unknown, inconclusive. It's always inconclusive. Then what's going to happen is you'll get that one day where somebody will actually come back with a body, and I guarantee you this thing will be on a slab, and they'll be doing an autopsy, and you will have half the world saying fake.
Yeah.
Until I can actually touch it myself, it's a fake. And then if they were there touching it, they say, "Oh, this can't be. This must be some type of deformed animal." So I've just come to the conclusion that I'm trying to find this evidence for myself, for self-satisfaction. If people believe it, they believe it. If they don't, they just don't.
Yeah,
That's a good point. That's a good point.
I don't care if it's Bigfoot or aliens or paranormal. Unless you're an experiencer, you're going to have a better skepticism. Once you become an experiencer, then you start taking more of a, well, okay.
Yep. How many times have you seen the, I used to be a skeptic story? Or you heard that? I was a skeptic until then. They had this themselves, and all of a sudden they're a believer.
Yeah.
I was even a skeptic about ghosts until I saw one.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Then realize they do exist.
Yeah, they do exist. Yeah, like the M&M commercial. They do exist.
The mountain.
Oh yeah, Santa Claus.
Yeah, the mountain gorilla was a myth at one time, right? The giant squid was a story that sailors used to tell, and it wasn't real, and they were all drunk and blah. There was always something, and then what happens? Japanese ship drops bait. It gets video of like this 36 foot long giant squid for the first time ever. Makes international news. And in the meantime, you find blue whales with these sucker marks all over them, where they've been in battles with this giant squid. Apparently this is their food. They eat them. They found them in the stomachs of blue whales. Now they find them in fishing nets. So one time, this thing was a cryptid. It was an unknown, and now we know definitively that they exist. We've found the corpses. We found them and stuff. We know that they're there. Same thing with the mountain. You can see a mountain gorilla in a zoo now. I think the mountain gorilla was first discovered. I think it was like it was in the early 1900s. I don't know if it was 1923, 1908, but that was the first time.
Yep. Komodo dragon was in like the 1920s. The coelacanth, all this kind of stuff,
Yeah, the coelacanth, they were all. Yeah, the coelacanth was supposed to be extinct for what, like 23 million years or something like that. I forgot what the date was, but it was then all of a sudden they found it. Was it off the coast of like Africa or something?
Yeah, Madagascar. Yeah.
What is that?
A coelacanth is it's a prehistoric fish, and they thought they've only found for a while they only found fossilized coelacanths, and they thought it was extinct, and they found them swimming in the ocean, flourishing
without hardly any evolutionary change whatsoever. The ocean's a pretty static environment, but you would still think there would be some evolution. But no, getting back to the idea of portals and things like that, it would seem as if something from the very distant past just appeared in our world.
That would be crazy if it just came through a portal and just happened to be here.
That's right. There we go. I think we should get a show together sometime and talk Nephilim, though. I think we should. I think this would be a good panel to do it.
Yeah.
There's.
Right.
I had a big discussion on another podcast about the Nephilim and connections with the spirit world, and so that's something that would be a really good discussion.
Do you think that negative blood is connected to Nephilim, or I'm trying to find out answers on O negative. That's what I am, but nobody knows anything about.
Are you O? I'm A negative.
Yeah.
Is it? There's a lot of women that have, that I guess. What would you say? Like we see things and have encounters and stuff, and a lot of us have the RH negative factor. Which What do you, Christopher? Do you know anything about that? What do you think about that? Is there any connection?
Yeah, there is. A lot of it has to do with, of course, with your positivity levels and your energy levels. But like you're talking about being negative and positive, usually, I know this is going to sound weird, but women can have easier communications with not only ETs but as well as Bigfoot as well, because they're as a female you have more of a range of being able to see compared to a male. because most men do have a little bit of skepticism in them, whereas women are more open and they have more of abilities to, like a woman would have a UFO sighting probably quicker than a male would. In fact, I work with a lot of experiencers that the females seem to be more, I don't want to use the term target, but they seem to be more of a communication wise, and they can even telepathically communicate with ETs better than men. But in some cases, a man can strike up a friendship with, let's say, a Bigfoot or an ET, and develop more of their psychic abilities to communicate. As a female, women can be more psychic and have abilities quicker than men. But over time, with proper training, communication, men can become just as equal. Mm-hmm. And that's why you'll find if you go through a list of like ET experiences or even Bigfoot stories, you'll find it seems to be more the female seems to outnumber the sightings and the experiences compared to men, but it's not always the case.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Yeah.
You think that there's because when you mentioned about, for example, these connections, I always think of like a Skinwalker Ranch, because this seems to be a point of convergence for many different types of energies, or maybe one type of energy. But you have the Bigfoot, the Bigfoot enigma there. You have what they call skinwalkers, but you also have UFOs. The Sherman family, when they were in Homestead 2, or not before the Sherman family, I forgot the family's name. When they're Homestead 2, they reported shadow people. They reported alien encounters trying to take away the wife, when he actually had to chain his wife to the bed and he shot at it with an assault rifle. They kept abducting his wife. When the Sherman family took over, they found in Homestead 2, they found these massive chains on the doors that were obviously held big guard dogs. So I wonder if you got this. What is it about locations like that, right, where you have this convergence of energies, where you're seeing not only Bigfoot or dogmen and skinwalkers and ghosts and shadow people and UFOs all in one location? Does this mean that they are aware of each other, or there's just maybe that this location is like a ley line conversion and it offers a good point of entry into this realm?
Yeah, bingo. I think that is the point. Here in America, we don't talk about ley lines very much, but I know whenever I was researching over in England, that's the big thing. And the idea that there's nodules or nodes, naturally occurring spots in our Earth's grid that has, more energy release than other areas. I think that we are forgetting is sometimes to find the key to the future, we have to look into the past. And I think the ley lines is one of the most convenient and logical explanations we have for a lot of these questions.
Gene Hudson wants to know, how long has the panel been researching the Force people or Bigfoot?
I'll be right back. I'm getting a glass of water real quick, okay?
Okay. I have been actively researching them for over a year. When I had the first encounter, like I said, where that grunt, and then I was hit with the infrasound. But prior to that, I kind of have a lifelong obsession with them. But it is like, I think one of you had mentioned that, even though you believe that they exist until I actually heard it and saw, then like, oh wow, they really, really do. Yeah. So anyway, so that's my
Matt. What about you?
I've ever since I've seen Harry and the Hendersons, I've been very interested in the phenomenon. I've never really gotten out there and kind of scoped it out and tried to investigate it, but I've definitely had watched plenty of videos and was very interested in the subject.
Mr. Murphy, Ron, we'll go to Christopher. What about you?
Sorry, my up. Yeah, I'm sorry about that. Yeah, 30 years. I've been investigating all my life, but for 30 years academically.
Interesting. Christopher?
Very cool.
Yeah, I've always had a fascination not only for Bigfoot, but as well as ETs. In fact, I still communicate with my ET friends occasionally, and they've often told me that because we're all one cohesive unit, that what the ETs want us to do is they want our positivity levels and to raise our vibration levels, to raise up to their level, because once we get to their level, we can then begin to not only travel through time and portals and different things, but once we get to their level, which is what they've been trying to do for years, but it's hard to get everybody on the same page. Once we get up to that level, we'll then be able to communicate not only easier and more active with them, like I have before, but also be able to interact with the Bigfoot and other areas. But it's getting us to that level, and I've been researching and had fascination for this since the day I was born, pretty much. I always knew I had a connection in some ways.
Interesting. Greg?
A little over a decade for me.
Mark?
About the same. Mostly for me, it's a lot of data and analytical research. But also, I've been fascinated by this topic since childhood, since the old days of Fate magazine and In Search of and all these other great shows. I just couldn't be torn away from the topic.
And how does everybody find you and get a hold of you and follow you? Start with Barb.
Sorry, my dog was barking. I muted myself. I can be found on Facebook, No Drama, Bigfoot, and Cryptid's Facebook page. And I have a YouTube channel that I put a few of some of the best videos and whatever, audio that I come up with. I have that on there too. But
awesome, Matt.
We got a mostly ghostly page on Facebook, and our YouTube page is Boombastic Media.
Interesting. Mr. Murphy.
The Facebook, all the kids are using that nowadays. So it's Ronald Murphy on Facebook.
Christopher?
Yes, that can be found on Facebook. It's a Crappie King, Christopher Harmon. And you can also subscribe to our YouTube page at Something Wicked Paranormal Investigations and watch all of our shows. And I teach a psychic class a couple nights a week, and I'm teaching another round in January. And anybody can sign up. It's $100 for an 8-week course, and you become a psychic remote viewer, and you also learn how to time travel, heal, and influence.
Interesting. Great.
I can personally be found on Facebook, and so can relicfilms.net and Relic Films on Facebook.
And Mr. Mark?
Yeah, I can be found on Facebook under Dark Doorway, and I can also be found on darkdoorway.com where my podcast resides. And obviously, all the famous podcatchers, Spotify, iTunes, wherever, Dark Doorway.
Absolutely. That's been great. What do you think, Lola?
This was wonderful. You guys come back whenever you want. I had so much fun. Thank you very much.
I did too.
A lot of fun.
Thank you.
And from coast to coast around the world, everybody, we'll catch you on the next show. Good night, everybody. Take
Nice
care.
meeting everybody.
Merry Christmas.
Bye.
Christmas.
Merry Christmas.